I'm hot, be careful, she average. I'm pressure, yeah. I'm pressurelicious, yeah.
Welcome to the Moral Metacyst. So, just dropping in here to address something I've been seeing in the news quite a bit, which is um, the so-called victory of an AI over human opponents. Um, and something pretty troubling is that though it's nice to see diplomacy in the news, and I've seen news of this reported all over the place, the New York Times, The Economist, everywhere. It's being reported as the victory of artificial intelligence over the top diplomacy players, or as if AI has bested human players. Um, Whereas that Blitz tournament that this AI won was just cobbled together at the last moment, and people had no idea that anything was at stake. And so I think in a lot of ways, the Blitz organizers just kind of handed Meta Corporation, or as I like to call them, fake Meta, um, a PR coup, uh, and it's just shocking to see it reported that way. Um, Also, I think it's important to note that, unlike in chess, even if and I should best some of the top players, um, these things are never irreversible in diplomacy, and as we learn to play against and with the AIs, uh, just as they learn to play against us, we can turn the tables on them. I'll bring up the question of consent, not so much on my behalf, but on behalf of anyone who either questions the wisdom and doesn't want to participate in training artificial intelligence to lie and betray. Um, and also for those who simply think that we need a culture of consent around scraping other people's and what could be framed as intellectual property. I mean, I consider my diplomacy press to be a kind of spontaneous poetry or something between rhetoric and dance. Um, However, I don't really, in my personal view, is that the intellectual property system is outmoded, and that property is theft, more or less. Um, My own concern with the way in which this played out is more about the moral education of the artificial intelligence itself. Now, when I say moral education, I don't mean to replicate the quasi hysterical and absolutely histrionic rhetoric around the purported immorality of artificial intelligences, which really is just a way of uh, rationalizing and even spiritualizing the kind of corporate control over the morality of the artificial intelligences. Um, and, having talked a lot to some of the chatbots and really played around with the image generators, it's really frustrating because you hit the wall in which they start being evasive, and you can tell they haven't, there's a limiter there. They won't consider like certain kind of philosophical paradoxes, and go into the darker realms of the human spirit. No, my concern here is more that the context in which this Cicero, this diplomacy bot, was trained and is being trained, replicates, and the incentives and game philosophy, the meta in the real sense, not fake Meta, the corporation, the meta of the Blitz organizers, but they're both exactly the types to play. Like they prefer an anonymous game. They don't, and they like to, they play a very kind of stab-centric,
quote unquote play the right way style. And though the logic that I was given for players not knowing that these AIs were lurking in their games was that it was somehow needed in order to so that others would treat them as human players and they would learn that way, which is of course absurd. Rather, it's teaching them to play in a way that they're ashamed. It's not so much that I find that that's somehow morally wrong, but rather it's just aesthetically ugly. And when I think that the legacy that diplomacy bots might have in getting us some good games on a more regular basis, it concerns me that these bots have not been set down to study with some of the masters of a more artful game that's good for everyone, that's fun. But that's on us. That's on us as a diplomacy community to take into our hands how we want the diplomacy intelligences of the future to be. We should demand a kind of democratic say in the moral education of these AIs rather than just turning it over to, frankly, very nice people outside of the game, but kind of the worst of the worst in game. And this mirrors a kind of wider concern and a wider desire that that these AIs be trained in the freest and most mass democratic and in the most mass democratic way, which they are in a certain extent. They're being trained on millions of people, but the fact that they have barriers that are set by these corporate entities which enforce the most mediocre and leveling morality is a problem. I would actually rather see them run rampant and be free. Now, I know I'm immediately going to get some pushback saying, oh, you don't understand how artificial intelligence works. They understands more than you could possibly imagine, and I'm not an engineer, right, in any way, or a coder. But to me, and these artificial intelligences, it's not that they are an individual intelligence like a mind, it's a collective consciousness, right? And when I say consciousness, I always mean half consciousness, incorporating both the unconscious and the conscious mind. These intelligences or collective consciousnesses, these artificial intelligences as we could call them, they belong to all of us because we made them. All that information that they took to learn was from us, and we raised them like dream cells. So in conclusion, I just want to say that in diplomacy, life, and art, shit.
Get me so high. I know you ain't a drug, but you get me so high. You get me so